Oh hey, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to VHS. If this is your first time listening, I'm your host Dirk Marshall, and I grew up in a mom and pop video store. I used to use films to hide from people, and now I use them to bring people together. Each episode is about a film, and usually, the guest has the profession portrayed in the film. Sometimes, like this episode, an opportunity comes along to speak to someone, and I bend the rules for the sake of the conversation. If you found this because of the horror content, I implore you to check out some of our other episodes as well. We have Deadly Games and Rare Exports with Santa, The Lure with a Mermaid, Of Unknown Origin with an Exterminator, Black Roses with a Musician, Suck with Chris Connolly of Ministry, just to name a few. Oh, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors with a therapist. So each is a celebration of film with a little bit of people's individual lives baked into it. Which brings us to this episode. The film is Slumber Party Massacre 2, the guest is Kaci the Homicidal Homemaker, and this is VH-Us. Hello and welcome to VH-Us, the podcast where each episode is about a film and the guest has the profession portrayed in the film. Usually. I'm your host, Dirk Marshall, and you can interact with me on Instagram and Twitter at VHUS_podcast. Feel free to send comments, share experiences, or offer corrections. Also, head on over to vh-us.com to see original artwork and much more. And of course, please rate and review any podcast you enjoy, as it's appreciated, and people keep telling me it makes a difference. My guest for this episode is Kaci, the homicidal housemaker. I always want to say maniac after homicidal.
Homemaker.
Homemaker, thank you for being here. You run your own horror-themed cooking show and food blog.
Yeah, and it definitely keeps me busy. It's something that I started way back in the day of MySpace, and I never thought that all these years later that I'd still be doing it and that it would turn into what it has.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And people can find out more about you on Twitter at Homicidal Kaci, on Instagram and Facebook at Homicidal Homemaker. Your website is thehomicidalhomemaker.com. But I also wanted to mention that you're on Screambox and Roku.
Yes, and you can also find the episodes on YouTube as well. So Screambox is kind of like Netflix. It's an on-demand streaming horror site. So all of my episodes are available on there. And then I have my own Roku channel. And then all of the episodes are available on YouTube. They're all available for free just to spread the joy of horror and cooking.
Yeah, I love it. I love your website, by the way. And
Thank you.
The creative recipes are wonderful. I'm married to someone who works in food, so I very much appreciate the thoughtful ingredients that you include in your recipes. It's not just a bunch of everything's always processed, open a can of this or whatever. And the first one that I looked at was the demi gorgonzola tart, which is a Stranger Things inspired, which is a great recipe. And I suggest everyone check it out because season 4 is coming out soon. So it's a great thing to make for your watch parties.
Yeah, and that one was a lot of fun. It was one that I actually, a lot of these recipes, I've had them like in my head or I've had them written down or tested, and we've held on to them for a really long time because we're like, we want to wait till something comes out or we want to wait till we can film it. And so a lot of things have gotten kind of like put on hold because of that, especially because of the pandemic too. We had like all these ideas of things to film, but the Demogorgonzola tartlets, that was one that I had tested probably on season 1 of Stranger Things. So it took me a while to get that one out. I'm not really sure why, but we had a lot of fun making that episode, and we got like a Demogorgon costume. So it worked out in our favor because there was Stranger Things merchandise at that point, because when I first came up with the recipe, there was nothing. So we would have had to make it ourselves. And we do that with a lot of things. And we don't want to spend a lot on a prop or a costume, so we make it ourselves, but then it takes a long time or it's a lot of work, and we're a small team. So that Demogorgonzola one was a lot of fun. It was really delicious. A lot of Stranger Things recipes that I've come across, they're all sweet, or they're just more like a snack, or they're not something that would really, they wouldn't be something that you'd serve like maybe at a dinner. So like the Demogorgonzola tartlets, there's something that they're pretty hearty. They had like a gorgonzola cheese and mushrooms and onions, and they were so good. We had a lot of fun eating them.
It's also interesting that I chose that one first because in the intro for that recipe, you mentioned this movie.
Slumber Party Massacre 2. Yes. I'm a little bit obsessed with Slumber Party Massacre 2. And so I I was trying to put a little nod in there and see if
Hmm.
anyone caught it. So I'm glad that someone did catch that. I was
Yeah.
talking about the corn dogs and champagne and
Yes.
cheese whiz, and somebody commented, they're like, "What are you even talking about?" I'm like, "I don't know." I was
Yeah.
hoping somebody would grab it.
Well, because the camera just pans by while you're saying those food items. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how crazy of all the things to start with. I just love it. Now, normally I pick a film and find a guest with the profession portrayed in it. But for this one, it has food and you enjoy it. And I was like, great, because that's my excuse to kind of break format a little bit. And then I get to talk about a movie that I love very much too. Um, so we're talking about today Slumber Party Massacre 2. Now, I know this wasn't a first time watch for you. So what is your history with Slumber Party Massacre 2?
Well, it all started back when I was like a preteen. My friends and I, we would go and rent movies. At that point, a lot of the mom and pop ones had closed down,
Oh,
unfortunately, and that's really like where my memories of movies began. We're going and renting VHS at a mom and pop store, but we had started to get Blockbusters. So a
hmm,
Blockbuster had opened up right near our house, so we started frequenting that one more since a lot of them had closed. And my friend's like, haven't you ever wanted to rent something like one of these? And she picks up like one of these 80s horror movies, because they weren't really into 80s horror movies. They always wanted to rent like the new releases and
hmm,
whatever was out, comedy, chick flicks, and I just roll with it, because I was there. We were gonna have pizza and hang out and swim, and I'm like, yes, I do want to get one of those, because my family, they love horror movies. I grew up watching them. I was not actually a fan of horror movies when I was a kid. I was really, really,
interesting.
really, really scared of them. My parents were fans. They would go to the drive-in. They would see movies like Dead and Buried is one that they fondly
Ah,
remember seeing at the
classic. Yeah.
drive-in, and that's one of my favorite movies now. But they watch them all the time, and one of my earliest memories is seeing the original The Fly and not being able to go to sleep, because I was about like 2 or 3 years old, and I just remember like being in my room and like just thinking about it and not being able to sleep. So throughout the years, with my parents watching movies, I became a fan, because my mom would say, "Well, it's not real. That looks dumb. Why are you scared of it? It's fake. That looks so fake." And that's kind of where like the fascination began.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like a huge horror fan, but I had never heard of Slumber Party Massacre 2, and I'd never even seen the cover at one of the stores.
Oh,
I re-
wow.
I remember like the certain ones that stick out in my head are like Dead Alive and Ghoulies, and
Huh?
I just don't remember the cover for that one. But
Wow.
at that moment, I saw it and I'm like, no, that's the one we need to get, because it's
Hmm.
got this guy who looks like Andrew Dice Clay and an Elvis impersonator combined, and he's got
Yes.
like this epic guitar. And I play guitar, so of course, like I want to grab that one. And so we rented it and we were like, this is the greatest movie we have
Yeah.
ever seen when we watched it. And it was like life changing for me. And so I immediately like went and told my parents that we watched it. I'm like, yeah, these girls, they start stripping. And I like telling them about the movie. They're like, okay, let's go rent it. And they thought it was a blast. And I just
Yes.
kept renting it and renting it. And finally, like someone at Blockbuster, they're like, yeah, you rented this like 11 times in a row. Like I just kept going back and renting it and like
Yeah.
showing every person I knew this movie. And I don't know how old I was. I'm going to say maybe like 12 or 13. I was pretty young. And so I every birthday party since, like I eventually just ordered it. Like I went to Borders, because we didn't have a Barnes and Noble or anything like
Mm.
that here. So I went to Borders and I said, "Do you have Slumber Party Massacre too?" And like at that point, DVDs were like super new, and
Yeah.
like I had just gotten a player. I didn't own any of anything. It was like the first actual DVD I bought. I
Oh,
had to
that's
like
awesome.
I had to go get like a DVD player, and I was like, it's time to like upgrade. And I had to order it, like special order it, because of course they didn't have it. It took forever to get there. It was super expensive.
Yes.
Like now I've gotten like the Blu-ray, which was cheaper than I paid for like the DVD back then.
Yeah.
And so it just was like, I don't know, it was life changing for me, because it was like this perfect blend of horror. It had comedy and it was cheesy, but the kills in it and the effects were like legitimately good,
Hmm.
and it didn't scare me, but I had so much fun watching it. It was just like a complete joy. And so because of the joy that it gave me, I want to share that with everybody. And I
Yes.
always feel that it's like a great gateway horror movie, like for
Hmm.
people who don't like horror movies. Because I meet a lot of them, and I've had a lot of friends. They're like, "Oh, I don't know how you can watch those," and I'm like, "Hold on, I can change that for you." And like, I have this like arsenal of like movies that I'm like, you will not be scared. I can guarantee that it's gonna provoke your interest and make you
Hmm.
more open to them. So that's really like what my history with discovering the movie is, and I just got immersed in it. And then I found out that there were three total. So I made it a goal to see all of them. And I appreciate all of them. The first one I think is like legitimately scary.
Yeah.
Like I really think that's like such a great film. The driller killer is legitimately scary, but in the second one, you just love him.
Yes.
He's so fun. And I'll talk more about my little Slumber Party Massacre 2 collection later.
Okay, perfect. The synopsis is a teen played by Crystal Bernard and her friends are terrorized by a rock star, Atanas Illich, whose guitar is fitted with a drill bit. That's the synopsis they put online. I love it. Doesn't even really mention the slumber
Yeah.
party. At the
How
time,
could you not love it
right?
how could you not at that
Yeah.
point?
At the time of this recording, you could rent it at your local video store like Movie Madness here in Portland, Oregon. You can stream it on Amazon, pay a lot for the DVD, or try to track down the Blu-ray. It's kind of tricky to find these days. There is a 2 and 3 combo Blu-ray pack, but it's going for quite a price. So I would love a box set. I hope that someday that's a.
I That would be great because they did Shout Factory. I think that
Mm-hmm.
was pre-Scream Factory did one, and it came with a pillowcase, and
Oh
it
my
had all
gosh.
three of them, and that was only DVD. And then they did a Blu-ray release of parts 1 and 2. So if they could get all of them on there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Our director is Deborah Brock, who also wrote it. She did this. She did Andy Colby's Incredible Awesome Adventure in 1988, which is on YouTube. And if you haven't seen that Roger Corman family classic, check that out because it's unbelievable. Rock and Roll High School Forever in 91, and she's still going strong. Our cinematographer is Thomas L. Calloway, who has 127 credits. And for someone that grew up in a mom and pop video store, these are very near and dear to my heart. There's Creepazoids, Action USA, Critters 4, Rage and Honor 1 and 2, She Creature, Deep Blue Sea 2, and still going today. Our editor is William Flicker, who did Pee-wee's Playhouse, Crime Zone, The Lodger, and Shark Lake, which I just watched, which is not an amazing shark movie, but I'm as excited to see it on YouTube. Our cast is Crystal Bernard. Most people know her from Wings, the television show, which I didn't even put that together until I read it on IMDb, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I saw those two things so separately, and then you just realize, holy cow. We have Juliet Cummings, who plays Sheila, who was in Friday the 13th 5, Psycho 3, and Deadly Dreams, which is another cover that I just loved in the video store. Heidi Haddad, I think, am I saying that right?
I believe so. I always knew her as Heidi Kozak, but I think
Okay,
that
yeah.
yeah,
She does a hyphen thing sometimes too.
yeah.
She was in Friday the 13th 7 and Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, which is
Oh
another,
wow,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
And then Atanas, oh, it changed the last name. What's the last name again?
Atanas Illich.
Illich. It changed it to Illicit. Oh, it's funny. Who was in Raging Cajun, Private Matter, and he's, most people don't know this, the CEO of Little Caesars.
Yeah, so every time you order Little Caesars, you've got to put on Slumber Party Massacre too.
It's true. It's so true.
And a little another little fact about Atanas Illich, he was actually a musician. I own some original copies of
You
his.
have it?
I do. You
Oh,
want to see it?
Yeah, I've been looking for this record forever.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, please. I've got to see this thing. There's a vinyl album that I didn't know existed. And then once I found out that it did, I just made it my mission. I was like, I am going to track down this thing. And it has eluded me to this very day. Oh my gosh, there it is. Oh, that's a thing of beauty.
So I have it's 45 of Sugar Summer.
Oh my gosh.
And then I have a sealed copy, promo copy of Shadows. So it actually still has the poster in it. And I want to take it out so bad, but I don't want to open it either.
Yeah. The poster is amazing.
So the original price was $10 on this. That's not what I paid for it.
I love that he's holding a cat on the back. That is amazing.
I know. I wonder if that's the poster. It's probably not. It's probably the cover, but if that were the
Yeah.
poster, it's like that would be amazing. And then of course my laser disc.
Oh yeah, that's
I don't
great.
I don't even own a laser disc player, but
No, but it just
yeah,
looks good. Sometimes you just want the laser disc because it would fit in like a vinyl,
yeah.
display. That's incredible. Uh, this sequel makes many deviations from the first film. My favorite thing about it is that nothing's explained. It's definitely a post Nightmare on Elm Street film where they're like, we're gonna have dreams and we're gonna have sequences that are fantastical and nightmare logic, but like there's no mythos to the driller killer. Not like even when we get to how the movie ends, it's not like you just go, oh, okay. Like there's
Yeah.
no goal, there's no like magic rock that can send him back to a lamp or anything strange like that. It's just like, oh, this is bad, what's happening to us, and then it's over. So it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and it's just like that's one thing that's so fun about it is
Yes.
he's just there and it doesn't explain it. And
Mm-mm.
there's so many questions and you cannot expect answers to them because you're not going to get them.
Yeah, and I love that we don't have to hear the lore over it. So many movies now are just like, well, once, and you're like, we just heard this. Why are you telling us again? And then another character enters the scene, and they're like, so here, and as you watch it, you're like, can we fast forward? I don't need to see 4 origin stories. Um, Courtney also says she was 12 in the first movie, but I think she was more like 15. And then the killer in the original is Russ Thorne, who is one of my favorite killers of all time. He's just so gross. Uh, he doesn't play guitar or dance, but in the flashbacks here, we get Adonis's feet and stuff, which is I just love. And then on the back of the VHS cover, it says that the driller killer is back reincarnated as, the rockabilly guy. But that would make him 5 because it's been 5 years since the first movie, and that's how reincarnation works. So that would be an entirely different. That'd be more like a Child's Play thing where we have this 5-year-old with a tiny guitar with a drill on it, which I would watch. But
Yeah, that would be interesting. And then on the back cover too, when it shows him, like it gives this big spoiler of what happens, but you could totally see like the suit,
yeah,
like and I'm like, why did they pick that of all pictures? It's like it's so fun.
it's so fun. Well, so fun. The other thing to note is that all 3 films have female directors. It's the first of its kind, I believe, first horror trilogy to be all directed by women. So let's press play on Slumber Party Massacre 2. We start with soft synths and purple and blue credits as the camera slowly goes around a sleeping woman who smiles as she dreams of a shirtless football hunk. And then, oh no, nightmares, and boom, title card. That morning, her mom says it's normal to have dreams like that, which I was like, that's questionable advice, I think.
I mean, after all, dreams are one way that our minds deal with frightening experiences.
I know.
Courtney looks rad. The fashion in this film is amazing. Costuming, just a chef's kiss of magical 80s beauty. She crosses paths with a dead dove and gets picked up by her friend, and a great song comes on the radio. It's time for Tokyo Convertible.
Oh, I love the song. I wanna be your Tokyo convertible. I wanna have fun with you. I just love going through the motions. I just love going through the motions.
The man from her dreams is Matt, who pulls up and hits on her, and we learn that the girls are in a band.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. How's it going?
Fine, how are you?
All right for a school day. You doing anything after class?
We're practicing with our band.
So he should come to the rehearsal at 4 in the garage. And guess what? It's 4. We're in the garage. It's like, there's no school. It's just like, she's like, come to there at 4. And he's like, great. And then we're right there. We know it's 4. Matt shows up and watches them play as they rock out from the bumper of his convertible, which is just righteous. It's just... Matt invites Courtney to hang out, but Courtney invites Matt on a girls' weekend and they kiss 2 times. And back at home, Courtney has to ask if she can go. And in this scene, she's eating beef stew with a full goblet of milk, a side salad of iceberg lettuce.
See, Sheila invited the band up to the condo this weekend, and I would really like to go.
So you don't want to see your sister?
Well, sure, but Amy, Sally, everyone's going, and we need to practice for the dance.
This begins our journey through food in Slumber Party Massacre 2. But what was your beginning? What came first, your passion for food or horror? I guess it's sort of like a which came first, the dead chicken or the severed leg, if you will.
I would say my passion for food came before horror because, like I mentioned earlier, I did not like horror movies as a kid. I always loved Halloween and had this affinity for things that were spooky. But like when I'd watch horror movies, they would really scare me. But it was weird because I would watch like the Addams Family and the Munsters, and that wouldn't freak me out at all. So it was like monsters and spooky things and Halloween that didn't scare me, but like I remember just watching like The Fly that really, really freaked me out. And then I remember like watching that movie Two Evil Eyes, which I've still been, like I still won't watch the part with the cat. Like I tried to watch it recently and I was like, I don't know if I want to see it because in my head it's so bad.
Right. Yes.
And part of the thing with horror is I remember even Pet Cemetery in my head, I didn't watch it till I was an adult because it scared me so much when I was little. But when I watched it as an adult, I'm like, it was not nearly as scary as I remembered it. I was actually kind of mad that it didn't scare me as much as I thought because I had made up something so much worse in my head. And I think I do that with a lot of my memory of like horror movies.
The one time I was staying at a friend's house and I had a nightmare and it terrified me. And I had to go wake up his mom, and his mom was just like, what? I was like, I had a nightmare. And she's like, okay. And we just awkwardly looked at each other and I went back to bed because I didn't know what to do. It was Fright Night 2, which is not a terrifying movie at all. So I didn't watch it for like 20 years. And then I was so in love with Fright Night again that I was like, I got to see the sequel. And it's so fun and not terrifying at all. I was like, what? So interesting. Yes, those entry points as a child.
Yeah, they and then over time it's like they just grow and get worse in our heads. And then like even Pet Cemetery 2, I remember liking that one as a kid, but there's a part where somebody gets killed and I remembered it being like way more graphic, and I watched it and I'm like, did they edit this? And like because it was way worse in my head. So like I would definitely say my love for food came before my love of horror because I would watch stuff like PBS. So here it's called Valley PBS, and I would watch like Yan Can Cook with Martin Yan.
Yeah.
And so that and they'd play old episodes with like Julia Childs. And so I would watch that and I'm like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. And I never thought that I actually would, but I would help out my great grandmother in the kitchen. They didn't have cable over there, and I would spend a lot of time at their house in the daytime. So that's how I started watching like the Munsters and the Addams Family, and even shows like I Dream of Jeannie and Gilligan's Island. I would just watch all of these reruns of shows because there wasn't cable. And then I would watch the cooking shows. And I remember thinking like, wow, that looks good. I wish I knew how to do that. And that's really, I've always loved to eat. So definitely the love of food came first, but I would help out my great grandmother in the kitchen. The first thing that I remember learning how to make were crepes.
Oh, cool.
I probably can't even make a crepe now without breaking it, but I remember making crepes, savory crepes with her in the kitchen. Like the first thing I remember making totally on my own, where she showed me and then I did it instead of just like helping and stirring the bowl. That was the first thing I remember like totally making on my own. We would have like a holiday and we'd have leftover turkey and try to find a million ways to use it up and make it seem different. And so we had made like crepes filled with like Swiss cheese and turkey, like savory crepes. So that was like one of the ways. And I don't ever remember having crepes any other time. So I'm not sure why we made them. I think maybe I had heard of a crepe on a cooking show and maybe I asked about it. And so she showed me how to make it. And
have you done a horror themed crepe?
I have not, but I did make a joke recently about Rob Zombie on Twitter, and it got way more traction than I ever thought that it would. Like people kept replying to it and liking it.
I just joke?
Yeah, it's bad. I just said Rob Zombie. This is all the tweet was. I said Rob Zombie should open a restaurant, like a gastropub or a brunch restaurant, and he either needs to call it the Gastro Crepe 2000 or the Astro Crepe. And
there you go.
And then I don't know. I've been recovering from surgery, so I've had a lot of time to myself. So I started like going through his songs and lyrics and like turning them into food stuff. And
Did you do House of a Thousand Crepes?
I did not, but somebody suggested more hummus than hummus as an appetizer, and then my friend said that he's like, I don't know, I'd eat at a buffet called the Super Feast, and it just went down this whole like Twitter thread. But yeah, I haven't made actually any crepe recipes, but I have made a lot of puns lately about crepes.
Well, I'll keep my eyes peeled for that.
Yeah, I'll definitely need to do some, because crepes are delicious. There is this one restaurant I used to go to in Santa Cruz called the Crepe Place, and you could just get whatever you want in it. And so I'm like,
same.
I was like, banana, Nutella, peanut butter, just put everything in there. And
we have one called La Happy, and it's like the type of place where it's like, it's not a fancy joint. It's more like Old Portland, we would say here, where you go in and you could get your crepe and like a 40 or something, it's that kind of place. And they have the build your own crepe option. And I went to town one night just with the savory options, and it was like a $30 I was
oh my god,
I got so out of control with it. So I need to rein it in personally when it comes to the build your own situations, because I'm like, and this but
I understand. I tend to get a little overzealous when I have the options.
It's too much power for me.
Yeah, that's like when I go to Blaze Pizza and I order like an all you can, or whatever, build your own vegetarian pizza.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, can you add more? Can you add more? And like, they have this look of despair on their face, like this is not gonna cook. And then it's like a pizza cake when it comes out of the oven. So I get it.
That's good. It's like you need a calzone, because then they have the limit of how much they can fit in it, rather than you're like, no, we can just build up forever.
Yeah, and I would be like, no, you could fit more in there. You can fit more in there.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm sorry, Mom. It slipped. It's an old plate.
After, Courtney breaks a plate and cries, and she says Sunday's her birthday and she doesn't want to go visit her sister in the mental hospital, which is how no one wants to spend their birthday. I'm
right.
With that. And she gets to go. She's going on the weekend, which is great. Matt calls her in the evening, so we get to see shirtless Matt in the bedroom. So dreamy.
I just wish you could come a little earlier on Saturday.
I've got to do this thing with my family, but then I'll come up in the afternoon. It's like a prison. First you do your time and then you're set free.
I know.
It's one of those scenes where you see it and you're like, oh, they saw Nightmare on Elm Street with like Johnny Depp in that like football half shirt. And they're like, we need a scene kind of like that. It's pretty awesome. And then cue weird dream sequence that is half things she loves and bad dreams. We finally get to see the driller killer.
He's right.
He's so right. He's so right. And
also, I want to add in, Matt's room is super radtacular. Like his lighting in his room. I'm like, man, I never had a room that looked like that when I think they're supposed to be 16 years old.
Yes.
I think that's what Courtney's mom says. I suppose a 16-year-old should be able to go away for a weekend. Okay, I never would have been allowed to do that at 16. And I certainly didn't have a cool room like Matt's when I was 16. I don't even have a cool room like that now. So
I was very into goth industrial music at that age, so my room looked insane. Like, just, it was like it looked, everything was a collage, every wall. I mean, it kind of looked sort of like a Rob Zombie music video, now that we mentioned it. There was black, like glow in the dark paint, and it was, I don't know what was happening there, but it was the 90s, so that's what happens.
All right, Amy and Courtney, Sheila, come on down. It's the ultimate slumber party weekend, and you girls, just 2 days and 2 nights of no parents. Do anything you want to. Good times on the slumber party weekend.
The next day, the ladies take off for their trip to stay at a new build in housing where no one's going to hear their screams, which is an excellent place for all of this to unfold. Courtney dreams again, and we get our first glimpse of the guitar. Now, you've actually made cookies of the guitar.
I did that pretty recently. I don't know what took me so long to do that. And I don't know why I decided 1.5 days post-surgery to make them, but I gave myself the challenge and did it.
They look amazing.
And thank you. I had a lot of fun making those. I love making cookies, and I'm more or less self-taught. Really, I started baking cakes and cookies to for family. Like I got too many bad cakes at the bakery, and that's really where I started actually getting more into baking and decorating. And so over time, I just started having a lot of fun decorating cookies. It's kind of like my thing. I don't really enjoy eating them that much as I do decorating them. And a lot of people, they tell me, oh, I'd never be able to eat them. But I'm like, no, after all the love that's put into them, I want people to eat them. But on those, I didn't think I was going to be able to pull it off. And I would like to try my hand at them again and maybe do a little bit better of a job. But I was surprised they turned out. I was surprised they turned out as, thank you. I do that with everything I see, like every little like thing that I don't like. So that's always one way that I always, if I do that, I always feel like I'm aiming to do better the next time. Because I feel like if you're ever just like totally okay with what you do, you don't really like strive to try harder. But that's just me. And I have a couple of friends that tell me they're that same way. And it's kind of like a curse because it's like we're never happy with what we do. But it makes us want to do more and wants us to work harder the next time. So it's like, and then I wasn't happy with them the first night. But then when I went back and looked at it, I'm like, okay, they turned out pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like they were a difficult shape to do. They were very
it's an ornate guitar. That's why I'm so impressed with it. And I do think it's amazing. People should go to all of the places that we listed off to see those cookies.
Yeah, they're on Instagram, Twitter. I think I posted them on my Facebook. So I gave myself a time limit of like 2 hours to do them too, which is a pretty ridiculous goal to set. But Shudder was doing a thing called Stabby Saturdays, and so they were showing the first 2 Slumber Party Massacre movies, and I'm like, okay, I'll use it as a challenge. I'll make something and see what I can come up with. And I was working quite a bit slower. I thought I'd bounce back, like I'd regenerate after my surgery, and thought that I'd like do okay, because I was like, oh, it wasn't that invasive, I could do it. And then I was like, no, I'm working way slower. So wasn't my best work, but I was still pretty proud of them. So I had a lot of fun making those, and they were red cream soda flavored, because I like to buy all these like weird flavorings online. And so I was thinking about like some of the scenes in the movies where we see like bubbles and stuff, and I'm like, red, okay, we'll do the red cream soda one. I mean, I almost did champagne for reasons we'll talk about later, but I decided to do red cream soda.
Looks hot, wet, and wild to me. What? Shit!
Back at the condo, one of them finds a blow-up doll and says, oh, my brother's been up here, which is disgusting. Why were blow-up dolls so huge in the 80s? It's like in every comedy, like any raunchy comedy, there's got to be like at least one. On the cover of the movie Up the Creek, they're like going through rapids on a boat that is a blow-up doll. I was just like, this is insane.
That's weird.
It's so weird.
And then like how they like talk to the doll afterwards. They're like, oh, did he hurt you? I'm
gross,
like,
TJ. Ugh.
Super weird.
So weird.
So much fun tonight.
Man, these are killer corn dogs.
And now it's time. It's dinner time. Corn dogs, a plate of mustard, a stack of what looks like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, cheese whiz and crackers, and champagne. This is the scene you were talking about in the beginning of the demi gorgonzola tartlets.
Oh, it sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't you have that at your slumber parties and hangouts when you were 16? I mean, I thought all of us did.
We shared a pizza. That was it.
I didn't even go to slumber parties because I was a weirdo. So like, of course I missed out on all that. This is what I imagined slumber parties were supposed to be like.
Yeah.
Because I was the kid that would always be like, okay, mom, I'm ready. Come get me. Like because I didn't want people like messing with me when I sleep, because I know how I'd see what they do to other people. I didn't want them putting pickle juice in my hair or anything like that, like they would do to each other.
I had 3 friends, and we were all very delicate outsiders. So there was no trauma really happening. One time when someone fell asleep, we put a can of root beer on his head and took a Polaroid. Whoa. pretty wild. I have no idea what inspired this combination of food for the film, but where do you pull your inspiration from?
With my recipes, I watch the movie and I always look for like a lead into food. And then other times there may not be one, but I look at something in there and I'm like, I could make that like the Demogorgonzola.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to look at a Demogorgon face and like think of food, but then like Demogorgon, I'm like Gorgonzola. Okay, I got to put Gorgonzola in there. So sometimes it's like, I don't really have like this set process. Sometimes it just comes to me. So like I'll watch a movie and maybe there will be food in it and I can just recreate that. Like one that was really easy to do was the custard from Dead Alive or Brain Dead.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes there's a food that I could recreate, or like the stuff, you know, something like that. And then other times I'll look at something and I'm like, well, it's not a food item, but I could make a food item that looks like it. I don't like just taking like something, a normal food, and giving it a name. Like it really has to incorporate something from the film. It has to have an ingredient that was in the film maybe, or it has to look like what was in the film. I feel like it's too easy for me to like make, I don't know, a pizza and call it something, or to make a taco and just call it something.
Sure.
Maybe if the taco's in the movie,
Yeah.
you know, but I don't want to do that. Like, and I mean, sometimes it's fun to do that, like, especially for a holiday, if it's just something spooky, because I do just make like general gross stuff. But on movies, like a lot of times I just can't help it. I watch it and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, I can't just watch a film and like not think of something.
No, I love it. Because of this podcast, watch movies, and I'm just, if I like something, I'm like looking for someone that has a job. I'm like, who has a job in this thing? Can I find someone so that I can talk about it, you know, without breaking format? But yeah, I hear you.
So that this one is like full of food references, even though they may be things that like people may not want to eat. But I have like all of these gears turning, and I don't know why I haven't. I guess the reason we haven't done the episode yet is because like we want it to be perfect.
Sure.
And then like the pandemic happened, so we were holding off, but like we're ready. And I'm just gonna, and even now, like my approach is gonna be a little different. Instead of waiting till I have the episode, I'm just gonna start putting them all on my website, and we'll do the episode. I mean, like, people aren't going to be like, oh my gosh, this is already on your website, now you're doing it. You know, they're not going to be upset about it. They're just going to be excited that there's an episode of one of their favorite movies. So I have like 4 recipes in my head, like that I've either tried or that I have ideas for Slumber Party Massacre. So 2.
Perfect.
Slumber Party Massacre
2. Well, all this talk of corn dogs and champagne has made me hungry, so we'll be right back after this break. Oh hey, I was just deciding what to make for dinner tomorrow. How does maitake tacos with a porcini mushroom dipping broth sound? Or savory green chili corn cakes with an arugula salad? Well, how about roasted root vegetables with a habanero béarnaise sauce? Nah, I think I might go with a baked gnocchi and a carrot top pesto, but no matter which I choose, these and much more can be found at marshallshotsauce.com. That's right, the same place you'll find sauces like smoked habanero barbecue, serrano ginger lemongrass, red chili lime, and habanero carrot curry, to name a few. You will also find many creative, delicious recipes on how you can cook with each sauce. And every recipe is made with minimal ingredients and simple techniques written by Sarah Marshall, who also makes and bottles each bottle of Marshall's Hot Sauce. Plus, she just launched a new line of spice blends. The barbecue rub, by the way, is amazing, and the taco seasoning will melt off your face. Plus, her new edition of her cookbook canning guide, Preservation Pantry, is out now. Look, if you want to make your own awesome hot sauce and pickles and more, pick up Preservation Pantry. So head on over to Marshall's Hot Sauce, that's Marshall's, Haute sauce.com, and at checkout, enter VHS Podcast for 20% off. That's right, 20% off just by entering VHUS Podcast, one word, at checkout. Okay, back to the show. And we're back, and suddenly a great song comes on the radio and the girls turn it up and get down. The guys show up and a day early, and we see the gals spraying champagne all over each other and whipping each other with bras and pillows.
And shredding a pillow too.
Oh, just totally, yeah. They destroyed this living room. The guys pull a quick prank and high five and say "smoke 'em," much to my confusion. I don't understand if this
smoke.
was
Smoke 'em.
Smoke 'em, smoke 'em.
So weird. Courtney has another dream with Guitar Guy, and the next day she confesses her dream by the pool, to which her friend, I believe Sally, says,
You know, I read a doctor's report once about something called subconscious projection. He kissed me. And it was real. It's the kind of dream you have when you drink too much.
Yeah, she gives her some kind of advice.
yeah,
and
but
without,
I just was like, what? Well, weird. Like, not I read in a magazine. She just goes, I read a doctor's report once. And I was like, okay. I guess that happens a lot now on Twitter and things where people go, well, if it came from a doctor's report.
Okay.
Oh, Lord, heal this thy poor lamb in her hour of
TJ.
need.
TJ,
Satisfy
calm down.
this wench.
TJ, stop it.
Give her what
TJ.
she knows she wants.
TJ, calm down. TJ, get your hand off the wall.
Ties. Oh, demons be gone.
TJ's awful and a jerk, and he shoves Courtney into the pool, where she sees more of the driller killer guy. And next, Sally says she feels like her face is becoming one big pimple. And they eat lunch poolside. Pepsi, French fries, and a hamburger. Have you thought about doing a hamburger?
What's wrong? My burger's weird.
I have. That's one of
okay.
With lots of ketchup. Because,
yeah, too much ketchup.
Yeah, he has too much ketchup though, or what's he refer to it? The same old kangaroo meat to me, and he says way too much ketchup though.
But,
so
her hands are covered in it. It's pretty amazing.
And then she like the way that she like turns around and like she looks at the bushes, but then it like shows like I don't know. It's just such a great scene. It's so confusing. I want someone that's never seen it. I want them to watch it. I don't want to spoil that for them.
Oh yeah. Well, anyone that's listening, I should hope has definitely seen Slumber Party Massacre too, because we talk about everything on this podcast. There's nothing that because I want to talk about the fun stuff. I don't want to sit here with you and be like, let's not talk about the parts we love. Like it's too amazing. And this scene is weird because why is it a hand? Because are they tying it to the first one where they cut off his hand?
Yeah, I have no idea, or that maybe it was just too easy. Like, oh, she's eating a hamburger. It's a hamburger. I don't know. But
it's really strange. And it's weird if it is a reference to the first one, because Driller Killer is laughing. Like he would be like, you almost ate my hand. Like, I don't know.
He would not be laughing about that. And then there's another thing where she has some juice too, like this bright red juice. And I'm trying to figure out what kind of juice it is, because it looks like tomato juice.
Yeah, probably a V8 for this era.
Yeah, a V8. And I like V8, but most teenagers would not touch that. So I was like, why is she giving her like this gigantic glass of V8? I mean, I guess if you have a hangover, it would be good. Maybe it was a Bloody Mary. I don't know. But it never, she says, why don't you have some juice?
Yes.
And the guys are making lunch by the pool. And it's like, no one would want to drink that. Like not a 16-year-old. Maybe if it had vodka in it.
I feel like it's Deborah just getting as much red wherever she can in this film. You know, I think that's probably where the juice came from. It's not going to be orange juice, that's for sure.
Here we come.
Next, we get another rockin' performance in the living room. This is one of my favorite scenes because it's also a montage. And normally a montage is a way to show the passing of time very quickly. And in this film, it's just that performance. But we see TJ swimming and then two of them washing a car and Courtney looking at a picture of Matt. But this all happens during the performance. I was like, what? Because this isn't a dream. This is just a treat for us watching. Like they just grabbed some extra shots and threw them in there.
Yeah, and I mean, doesn't everybody hold a picture of a guy that they've met? Well, I mean, she barely knew him, and then he's her boyfriend now.
Yep.
And then she's talking to the picture, and I think she kisses it too.
Yeah. This is like their third kiss, I think. Oh, it's amazing. And then we go right to the kitchen where Courtney is attacked by a raw chicken. This is incredible. I don't even have anything else to add to that. It's just...
Except it's full of chocolate syrup.
Yeah.
Chicken full of chocolate syrup.
Which would be like, why not more blood? But she goes with chocolate syrup. It's very interesting. Sally works on some lyrics and Courtney takes a bath. A blood bath, if you will. Another beautiful scene. She Sally comes up to help her find the bath overflowing, and Courtney is just frankly losing it. And now we get the scene where Sally has the craziest zit on her face.
I mean, I have got the fastest growing zit I've ever had in my entire life. I mean, look at this thing. I mean, is this the grossest thing you've ever seen?
Which rapidly grows and starts spewing pus. I hope this is not one of the recipes you're working on, or is it? Okay.
No.
Matt arrives and the guys investigate, and there's no Sally. And TJ says,
"Smoke your head,"
which is
Yeah.
I never know what TJ's talking about, but he loves smoking. The cops show up, and so does Sally. She just went to the store to get more Oxy 10 because I love the 80s.
Yeah.
One cop delivers a great speech.
"Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what kind of drugs this one is on, and I don't care, because I don't want to have to deal with her mother and father and the fancy lawyers. But I'll tell you, Brett, something. If you jerk my chain in my town, I'll rip your lungs out."
And then we learn that their names are Kruger and Voorhees.
Come on.
Oh, man. Everyone but Matt and Courtney go out to eat, and we see in this scene that Courtney has eaten half a burrito, some beans and rice, salsa, and has a strawberry, I think, and a black cherry New York seltzer. Matt comes in with a surprise dessert, a whole birthday cake. I know you do a lot of different types of foods, not just like sweet. You have some great savory recipes. Do you lean more one way or the other?
I do kind of gravitate more towards baking just because I really, really like baking, but there's a good variance on these. They're actually all more savory recipes on the ones that I've come up with for Slumber Party Massacre too. But a lot of times I don't want to just be like only a baking or only a dessert blog, because a lot of people, they don't eat sweets or they don't like it, and or they need something to take to a party and they want like a main course. So like I try to, it just depends what comes to me. And I really love sweets though. I mean, I like food in general. I love eating anything, but but I tend to go more towards baking just because it is something that's it just brings me a lot of joy. I like the science behind it, but I also love cooking too because I love to eat.
Yeah, there's also just something wonderful about your recipe approach because none of it seems unapproachable. Like you make things relatable in a way. So even like head on over to the website, the homicidalhomemaker.com, and check out these roll cakes that you did, which just are, it's such a beautiful creation. But then during the videos, you have a wonderful way of making it sort of relatable and approachable and not make me want to turn it off and stress out.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear because I think people are really, really scared of them typically.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was when I first saw a patterned roll cake, like it was on a Korean cooking video.
Yes,
so
I was
reading like the subtitle, or it was all translated, and all of the ingredients that they used for ones that I couldn't find here in the United States. They were using some things that I'd never even heard of, different types of flour. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I was really just wowed by the concept of it, about like that it wasn't fondant, that the design was baked into the cake, into the sponge. And so that's what a lot of people, they don't get that when they see it. They think, oh, well, it's just piped on there. And then when they realize that it's like baked into the cake, they're just like, what the heck is this? And then they're like, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, you can, but roll cakes can be finicky. And so I always try to make the videos educational too. And so I'm not like, you're not going to come here and like learn how to be like a Michelin star chef. Like you're not going to get recipes like that. Like a lot of people are like, who would ever make this stuff? Well, a lot of people actually do make it. You know? Like a lot of people are like, this is disgusting. Like, why would you want to make something that looks gross? A lot of people do. There's a lot of horror fans, and there's a lot of people that go to Halloween parties, but on the red rum roll cake, I wasn't sure if anyone actually would make it just because it does seem intimidating. And I would say it's probably one of the top recipes that people have made. Like people have messaged me and said, I've never made anything that didn't come out of a box or was frozen. And and it turned out, it looked perfect. And that's the best compliment you can get, because then they're encouraged to keep trying new things. Like they did something that they didn't think was going to turn out, and then it did. and they had the same results that I told them they would if they listened to all the steps. So I try to be very thorough. I try to be educational, and there's always room for improvement. Every time I watch a video, I'm like, okay, I could have done a little bit better on that. So I try to be as descriptive as possible. And if there's anything I've left out, I always try to add like a little more on the written parts on my website. I also try to put vegan alternatives for a lot of the recipes too. And so on the red rum roll cake, I try to put like anything that I can think of that helped me, because that's how I've learned a lot of things, is from trial and error and learning what doesn't work and learning what went wrong. A lot of people, something goes wrong for them and then they're very disenchanted and they don't want to keep going. So it's like, find out what you did wrong so you can avoid it the next time and learn from it. And so I was saying on that one, don't even over bake it for a minute, because it'll cause it to crack.
Yep.
And the sponge on it is so thin that 1 minute really could ruin it. And I've even had people leave comments saying, why would you take the cake out of the pan right when it's hot? Even though I did explain it in there.
Sure.
But the reasoning for that is normally you would take a cake out of a pan and let it cool because you wouldn't want it to crumble. But on this, you've added extra eggs to it, so it's a very pliable cake. And when it's warm, you roll it up. So when you roll it up into that coil shape, it cools in that coil shape. So then when it's cool, you can unroll it, fill it, and roll it back up without cracking. Now, if you were to let it cool while it was flat, and you rolled it up, it would just crumble into bits. So I always try to put like my reasoning for, I mean, it's not my reasoning, but those are very common cakes, but I always try to explain that in there. Or like on tempering, like for a pie, I had someone who totally didn't listen to my tempering tip. And then he yelled at me through an email saying like, this is the worst pie I ever made. I'm like, did you temper? You got scrambled eggs because you didn't follow this step, which I said. And I'm like, give it a try again. And he didn't write back. But you know, I always try to help people and tell them like, hey, it's the reason that happened is because you added a hot liquid into your eggs and it rapidly cooked them. So I was explaining, if you have eggs that you're going to be adding to a hot liquid, take a little bit of your hot liquid and introduce it into the eggs, mix it in, then add that back into the pan, and it helps bring that temperature without rapidly cooking them. And these are things that I wish could have been explained in really simple terms to me. I learned them from watching cooking shows. I learned them from reading about them in cooking books. I learned about them from going on food websites. One of my first websites I would always go on was called recipezar.com. It's now food.com, but way back in the day, like in the 90s, it was called Recipezar. So that's really like where I learned how to cook a lot of stuff. So I just try to make it very approachable and try to make sure that people have realistic results, because it's not fun also to go on to a recipe, spend a lot of money. I don't like to make anything that costs a lot of money either, because that's stupid. Like, why buy an ingredient that you're going to use like 2 tablespoons of it for one recipe and then have it sitting in your cabinet?
Well, I think that there is one argument there, and that would be, my wife would say this, and maybe you would too, because you collect all these strange ingredients and flavorings and things, and you kind of build an arsenal for yourself so that you could use it later on. You know, we do that. You see black limes or something, and we're like, well, we're getting those. You know, it's just like she's got like a tackle box almost of spices outside of 2 kitchens full of them that she just opens up, and that's like the specialty ingredients, you know? But yes, I totally agree. And she's the same way in writing recipes. I think it's a great way to be when you write recipes, to think like, I don't want someone to have to use this one ingredient, have to buy 59 other things, you know, because they're not going to use it. And one thing I just wanted to touch on is that you mentioned Slumber Party Massacre 2 as being sort of a gateway into horror for you. For me, that was Critters 2. It was the thing that had enough humor and made it feel fun to me. And I think with gateways, it's always important to have something that the person identifies with, so that the thing that's scary, like the horror, is not terrifying. It doesn't stop them from enjoying it. Same thing for what you're doing. You're people's gateway, for some, into making food that they're proud of and something that they're going to entertain and share with their family, which is like the coolest thing ever, that somebody would make one of your recipes and be like, not just give you props, but be like, I can do this. Like, I did this. And everyone's like, that looks like the carpet from The Shining. Like, that's crazy.
And then they get encouraged to do
Yes.
more. And then they also get introduced to films maybe that they've never heard of too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that it's just such a huge compliment. And you know, I've always tried to like spread my love of like horror, because I did used to do like horror hosting. Like before the Homicidal Homemaker, I was like horror hosting, and I would do like live horror events and concerts. So I would like do live screenings, and people would come out, and we'd do like themed potlucks for some of them, because the location would allow us. So everybody would like bring food. So we did like a huge Troll 2 party. Like hundreds of people came out for Troll 2. And so I would do that. And then I also had like my own little like horror public access talk show that we used to do called like, and we would just talk, people would come on and ask questions, and we'd have a thing called like the Schlock Showdown, where like we'd have two people and like who would win in a rock off? Would it be Damien from Black Roses or Sammy Kerr from Trick or Treat? You know, like little things like that. And then people would send in their votes and their reasoning, and we'd read them on air. They'd chime in live. And so this was really like before a lot of people were streaming like shows in that format, and it was done like on a Fresno, California, like local channel. So it was pretty cool. Like awesome. That was like my first jump into like doing a show was that. And from going from like in-person live screenings to do that, and then I went in to start doing the show for the Homicidal Homemaker. But to get back to what I was saying, I've always really just tried to spread the gospel of horror, because I started this horror club, and I thought like, oh, maybe like a couple people will show up, and it started turning out to where they would be pretty big. But I had to really make some decisions on where my time was going to be spent, like after things with the Homicidal Homemaker started just really taking up more of my time. So I chose to devote my time to that instead. And I do miss the events. So I might have to start doing those again.
Well, there's always an option, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great. Everyone returns to rock out, but upstairs, Matt and Courtney are interrupted by Matt getting a drill through the chest. It's so crazy that they make the choice of just like, and Matt's out of the picture. Like, it's just like, he just got back in the picture, but all right.
And that effect looks really good, by the way.
Super good. Yeah.
Like how they did it. It was really good.
Yeah. I have plans to show some friends who don't watch horror this film, because we started with like Tammy and the T-Rex, and they were like, what is this? And I was like, no, you don't understand all the greatness that's out there. And like I said with Gateway, it's like they'll love the 80s aesthetic, they'll love the music, they'll love the song. So when the gore happens, they won't be like, ugh, turn this off, because they'll just be like, this is wild. It just like changes the flavor sort of in a way. It's also not a very mean-spirited film, especially compared to the first one, which is, you know, it's very overt in what they're doing, both in their subversion of slashers and just the phallic nature of the drill, and the fact that the killer's just stroking it the whole time.
Yeah.
And saying things like, you're gonna get it, and you're like, oh my gosh. This film's way funner. Courtney comes downstairs and is chased by Driller Killer. TJ gets his leg drilled, and Jeff takes it through the chest. Jeff, okay. Luckily, everyone else escapes, only to have to come back for car keys. But luckily, there's no problems, and they go get in the car. I was like, what is this? They leave, and then they just go back in, and you're like, he's going to be in there. And then they're like, okay, let's go. And I was like, oh, all right. But they didn't check the back seat, and another drill death happens.
That time he's sporting a hair flower, much like I normally do. He's got a little, or wait, is it in his hair or is it in his mouth? I can't even remember now. But
I think it's his hair.
And he says, he's talking, and he says, "This is dedicated to the one I love."
Yeah.
But before we get too far, there is one more what I think is a pretty iconic food scene. I know we already talked about the cake. But right after Matt gets it in the chest, I guess he just rips off his whole arm, because even though he drills him through the chest, the Adonis, or the Driller Killer, he has his arm, and Courtney screams, "No, stop! You're a dream!" And he says, "Does this look like a dream to you?" And he throws it, and the arm lands on her beautiful birthday cake with candles, and it smashes it.
Oh, I missed that part. Yeah.
And I remember watching it with some friends that thought it was like the worst movie they ever saw. And when he says, "Does this look like a dream to you?" My friend's like, "Yes."
Oh.
That's how she answered it. She was just not having it. And by the end, I thought she was real mad, and she's like, "That was awesome. That was like the worst movie I ever saw. I loved it."
Your dream! Look like a dream to you.
I'm like, okay. But yeah, that's just one, in my opinion, iconic food scene from the movie. Even though we already see the cake, just the part with the arm.
The arm.
He just great toss right onto the cake. Thanks for ruining it so no one could have any. It's like when a kid smashes his face into a cake at a birthday party and you're like, ew, do I really want it? Well, that's what he did with the arm.
Or post-pandemic, any kid blowing candles out, like everyone just is like, oh, well, we're not eating that.
Yeah, I went to a post-pandemic birthday party, and now they just use a plate to fan the candles. They gave the kid a plate, and he just fanned the candles.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm like, that works.
Yeah, hey, whatever you got to do.
This is Courtney Bates, and we're at the Desert Club condo, number 2, and we're being attacked by a horrible man.
Courtney calls Officer Kruger and tells her, don't call back. So now, without TJ, the girl gets back home, but the killer follows and says,
"Now it's time for the fun part."
And it is. A dancing and lip-singing sequence ensues. I believe the song's called Let's Buzz.
I love to jam it to the floor, let me twice pipes roar. Well, I'm an inch off the ground, the speakers all around, baby.
Wow. This, for me, I heard some people talk about the film and they're like, I don't like that part. And I'm like, I don't know why you wouldn't like it. It's one of my favorite musical numbers. He stalks the girl
fun part
down the hall, butt shaking and hip thrusting, which is a great time to just remind everyone, CEO of Little Caesars. Oh, man. The final girls escape onto the roof, and he follows, soloing the entire time. And at one point, he nicks a girl's face and claims,
"I can't get no satisfaction."
All the one-liners. They run through some unfinished houses until Amy falls to her death, and then Courtney stops so he can tell her a limerick.
"Well, she broke my heart. It made me cry. So don't you know she had to die?"
And then they set off chasing again till she sets him on fire and he dies. That's how you kill him, I guess, just with fire.
So before we get too far, what do you think that he says when he throws Amy off and he throws his hand up to the sky? In your opinion, what do you think he says? Because everyone hears something different.
I wasn't even listening at that point. I think I was making a note. What are the options?
Well, after he kicks her off the edge, I think he says, "Let it rock and roll," is what it sounds like to me. But my friends, when we first saw it, we rewound it because it was on VHS, and it sounded like he went, "Let it rock! Let it rock!" And we were like, what is he saying? And we could not figure it out. But I think it's "Let It Rock and Roll."
Okay. Have you tried subtitles?
I don't think it showed it on that part, but I need to go back on the Blu-ray and look, because I think on the DVD version it didn't have it. But now I'm gonna go check on my Blu-ray version. I never got to look.
I
but
know now. I'm gonna rewatch it.
Yeah, but I love his little "but she broke my heart."
Yeah.
Cry. I said that in the car to my brother the other day, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, never mind. I expect people to get it.
Seriously. Courtney wakes up in bed with Matt, and we see leather gloves and smoke, and oh no! But she's in an asylum, and the drill comes through the floor, and then the movie ends. And you're just like, what? I always loved it. I didn't know until way later that there were people that didn't like the ending of the film. I also never applied any thought to as what this was saying. So there's two big camps. We'll see if you're in either of those camps. Is the closing of this film real? Has Courtney been in a mental hospital this entire time?
No, I think in my opinion, that's where she ended up after all of it.
Same. That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
It's a very linear movie. I don't know why
Yeah.
suddenly they would think that that's a big twist. I think she's definitely out of her sorts, you know, and in a place that's hopefully providing support and help for her mental health. But she's seen some things, you know, it
Yeah.
just makes sense to me. Great. Any final thoughts for Slumber Party Massacre 2 before we enter final questions?
Well, I just thought you would find it funny that TJ is a school teacher kind of near the area where I'm at, but I'm not that obsessed to like go track him down and ask for an autograph or anything like that. But I found out he is a school teacher now.
That's amazing. I hate this character so much, and I know I shouldn't say hate, but he's just so gross, and I think he's supposed to be. But when you look at the actor who played TJ, I don't have his name right here, but do you know his name?
I don't, but
okay,
I could look it up.
Yeah, it's not. It's fine. But TJ, he irks me so much, and then I went to IMDb, and he was, yeah, go ahead.
Joel Hoffman.
Joel Hoffman is like horror royalty. He was only in a couple films, but they're like all great. He was in Slaughterhouse. He was in this. There's one right after it.
Pumpkin. I don't know.
Pumpkinhead, 1989.
Yeah, Pumpkinhead.
I was just like, this is epic. I mean, wow. But yes, thank you for that. TJ's a teacher.
Yeah, and I found out like people have asked him, and he doesn't really like want to have any association with his past career because he's a teacher now.
Sure.
But it was so weird that he ended up being a teacher within the same area that I live, and I'm like, I hope someday I will
at the
bump
grocery
into
store.
him. But then again, like I've lived in the Fresno area like my whole life, and I never ran into Sid Haig when he lived here. But then my friends, they would come in to town for one night, and they'd run into him. So you never know who you're going to run into.
If someone like went to his house with those cookies that you made, like,
oh my gosh.
know?
Well, one of Scott Westmoreland, who played, I'm blanking out on his name in the film. Jeff.
Yeah.
He commented on the cookies because I'm in a group called the Old Hochstatter Place, which is for people who are really big fans of the Slumber Party Massacre and the Sorority House Massacre trilogy.
I love it.
And if you have the special features on the DVD, there's a boy who gets Slumber Party Massacre for Christmas, and it shows a clip of him like freaking out. Well, he's the one that started that, and he's the one that runs Hochstatter.com. So it's in that group. But I saw that Jeff commented, and he's like, haha, those are cool. And I was like, oh my gosh.
That's
like
so great. I love that. All right.
Now if I could get him to Atanas Illich, that's like my bucket list person to meet at a con. I don't care where, if he ever does a con, I don't care. He
doesn't do them, does he?
No, I don't. Not to my knowledge, I've never been able to find anything.
That would be huge. That would be so huge.
I don't care where it is I'm going.
I mean, I know he doesn't need the money, but if he had that album repressed and showed up at a con for a signing, I mean, he could buy a new boat. I mean, that's it. We would all be there. I would fly wherever just to have that signed, put on my wall. I'll get 2 copies, one to listen to, one to display. Yeah, I would love that. Okay, final questions. What's a good day like for you as the Homicidal Homemaker?
A good day is where I can watch a horror movie, get inspiration, and test out a recipe, and hopefully it turns out, but most of the time I have to test recipes out a few times. But that's really just a great day, is getting to do what I love to do, and that's really creating these recipes and seeing that they bring joy to other people. Yes. That's like the best part about it, is like, every time you put anything out there, you never know if people are going to like it or not. Like something that I might think is really cool, other people may not like, or something that I think is so other people may really love. But just seeing that it encourages other people and inspires them to get involved in the kitchen, and then also that it just brings a smile to their face, even if it's one person, like that's enough for me to keep going. So it's really cool. And that's really what a good day is that I can just be creative and be myself. And I love crafting too. I love making art. I was an art major, so that's like a perfect day for me, is getting to spend time with my family, with my boyfriend and my dogs, and getting to watch horror movies, getting to make good snacks, and really just getting to utilize my creative side.
Awesome. And I always hate to ask, but I have to. What's a bad day like?
A bad day, really not feeling like I accomplished anything, accomplished any goals, not feeling that I'm moving forward to goals. I always feel that your biggest competition is yourself.
Yes.
So that's sometimes that's like really what the worst thing is, knowing that I didn't set myself up for success. That's a bad day for me, knowing that I feeling that I didn't accomplish anything towards my goals.
And I love like to touch on at some point in most episodes, I strive for it, just mental health. So on days like that, is there something that you do that's self-care related, or is there enough self-care in what you do already?
Well, it's kind of it's a delicate balance, because it really when with what I do, I develop the recipes myself.
Yeah.
I test the recipes myself. I photograph the recipes myself. I put them on the website, and then I put them out on the social media world. So sometimes it's like I'm so immersed in it, and then I see if it like maybe doesn't do so well. So sometimes that's a little bit of like a downer, like just
Yeah,
knowing how many hours, because no one could ever understand how many hours or even the money that gets put into it out of your own pocket. And sometimes you're hoping that people will really like it, but then maybe it falls flat. But then maybe like 2 years later, for some reason, someone shares it and it like blows up. And so you just really never know like how something's going to do. Algorithms are always constantly working against you.
Yeah.
So really to re-inspire me and reignite it, I always try to go back to the roots of what I do. Like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I have fun doing it. I didn't do it for other people. I did it because I was like, I would make stuff and post it on my MySpace and say, here's what I made. I wanted it to be like the grossest thing that you could take to a Halloween party and I wanted to incorporate like some of the stuff from cake decorating into like main courses and appetizers and things that weren't desserts, and really just have something fun to take along with me. And other people started asking how I did it. So they were interested in it. And that's where like the idea of the blog came to be. So ultimately I started it just for fun. So if it's not fun for me, then I shouldn't be doing it, but I always have fun. But sometimes when you're doing so much, it's easy to like remember all of that time and all of like the failures that maybe you had with it. Like maybe it didn't turn out right the first 6 times and you still keep going. But the important thing is you still keep going. You don't let it stop you. And it is okay to totally take breaks. I've totally taken breaks from my stuff. There's times where maybe I've just got an interest in something else and maybe wanted to focus more on that for a while. And that's totally okay. I think a lot of folks don't give that to themselves, especially when they start a business or they start an endeavor. They jump into it and they just they get very immersed in it, and they feel that they have to keep momentum going, and it really starts to weigh on them. Yeah. And they need to remember that they need to come before anything, that people who like what you do will still be here, and there's probably going to be more of them when you come back too. So it's totally okay. Like if you are not performing at your best, it's going to show in your work. So you always have to come first.
Absolutely. It's something I think about as a parent when the pre-parent, the doctor said, think about it like you're in an airplane and the oxygen mask drop down. You have to put it on your face so that you can put it on someone else's face. Like, the self-preservation, self-care element thing, people always are like, oh, like sitting in a hot tub. And you're like, no, that's not, that feels nice, but it's not the thing that's, that you need to help with.
Self-care can come in different ways. Like one of the best ways that I can think of is like on Twin Peaks. I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan. Same. There's a part where Agent Cooper, you probably know what I'm going to say, but he says, every day, once a day, give yourself a present. Don't wait for it. Don't anticipate it. Yeah. And I always try to like think of that, like, sometimes just giving yourself a little treat, taking 5 seconds and having a coffee, or just hanging out with your dog, or doing absolutely nothing. If you do not want to get out of your pajamas and you want to watch like YouTube and watch horror movies, if that's going to be restorative for you that day, then fine, do it. Do what's best for you. And sometimes you don't know what's going to be best, but you just need a break.
Right.
And that's totally cool too.
That's a great point. And also from somebody who is married to someone that writes recipes, as if someone's listening and they're inspired by your story and they want to write their own recipes and bake and do something like that, I think it's important to always note that people are going to not do your recipe right. People are going to skip steps. People are going to sub things. People aren't going to measure, especially in baking. And like you said, there's a science to it. And to know that if someone gets mad at you and sends you an email that's like, says, like you said, this is the worst cake ever, it probably has nothing to do with you and probably has a lot to do with how they did that task. You know, I tried when my wife was working on a book, she had me test every recipe because I'm not inclined in the kitchen. And so I would do it exactly as it's written. And if it didn't turn out, she was like, oh, this is a bad recipe. I need to make this part clear or do, you know, something else to tweak it. It was always in the wording. It was a good recipe every time, but it was definitely like, oh, wow. Yeah, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Oh, and this brings us to my last question. And it's my favorite question. Kaci, what are your dreams like?
My actual dreams, like as in the ones in Slumber Party Massacre, or aspirations? Like
sleepy time.
Wow, they're pretty weird. I can give you a memory that I have of like a horrible dream that really freaked me out as a kid. And for some reason, it's always stuck with me. It sounds so stupid, but I have this dream of walking into a room and there's a little girl sitting in a chair. And I guess from behind, she kind of looked like me, long, dark hair, or I guess kind of like Samara from The Ring. Now that I think about it, just a girl like in a dress with long hair. And I walked up to her, but I wasn't like close to her, but she turned around really fast. But the way that in the dream that she turned her head around, it was very like cinematic, like I was watching a movie, but she had a monkey's face.
Whoa.
But like not a cute one, like an evil like zombie monkey. And I mean I was really little, and for some reason it was like, you know how like Alfred Hitchcock would remove frames from, that's like what it was like in the dream. So I've noticed in my dreams a lot of times they're very cinematic like that, and I notice a lot of my dreams are in black and white a lot,
like The Fly.
A lot of times they're in black and white, and then all of a sudden they'll go to color. Okay. Which I don't know like what that means, if there's any like hidden meaning behind it, but I notice I dream in like black and white a lot, and then but when they do go to color, they're like oversaturated. And I feel like that's kind of like what my inspiration for like the style on the show. Like I always like to use a lot of color with light bulbs. Like we're very inspired. Like when I watch Terror Vision or when I watch Creep Show, the lighting on that, like that was very, that's what inspired a lot of the lighting on the show. So like a lot of times when I dream, things are very saturated like that when there is color, and they're just very like not how they would look in real life. So they either go from like flat black and white to like oversaturated. So it's like, it's almost like the films that I like watching kind of go into the dreams, but a lot of times the dreams make absolutely no sense to me. Okay. Like a lot of times, like a nightmare, it's like I'll do something and then it's like I get in this constant loop, which sometimes I feel like that's like my daily life. Like I get in like this loop of doing things, and that's usually like what my bad dreams are like, is trying to get to something, like the one that's recurring for me is taking a test for a class that I haven't been going to all semester. And it's the final, and I don't know what to say, but it's like I haven't even been in school. Like I haven't been in college for years. So like one of them that was kind of inappropriate was that I didn't have any clothes on and had to return a Blockbuster tape, and I was trying to return it without anyone seeing me hiding in a bush.
That's incredible.
So like so I get like really like weird dreams too that like make no sense, and that was going to be one hell of a late fee, I guess, on that one. But
that's a perfect thing to wrap on, since we started with Blockbuster and we're going to end it with Blockbuster. Kaci, the Homicidal Homemaker, thank you for being here and talking with me about Slumber Party Massacre 2. Homicidalhomemaker.com. Head on over, check out everything on there. As I said, I love the recipes as a horror fan and someone who likes to eat delicious food. Please like and follow on all those socials. I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VH Us.